All About Relationships is an engaging, lighthearted, and practical show designed to help people improve their relationships in meaningful ways. Hosted by Dr. Don Allen, a certified Gottman therapist, as well as an advanced trainer for the Institute. He is also certified in emotion-focused therapy. With over 40 years of experience in the field of psychotherapy, Dr. Allen is here to provide expert guidance on strengthening marriages, parent-child relationships, friendships, and more. Through insightful discussions, audience call-ins, and guest experts, viewers receive real-world strategies to enhance intimacy, communication, and overall relationship satisfaction. So now, please welcome the host of All About Relationships, Dr. Don Allen.
All right, and welcome back. This is my show all about relationships, working towards ideal marriages and loving, lasting relationships. Today's show, I'm going to give a shout out to the military. We just had Veterans Day yesterday, so I wanted to take a little bit of time and do another show to reach out to military and military families to give some good news and some good suggestions on how to improve your relationships and keep them for the long haul. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I actually am happy to say I have a little bit of information from a company that supports military. And we're going to do that as a commercial in commercial form here a couple times today because I want you to see it and I want you to be able to write it down because these folks really care about military and military families. And I'll explain a little bit more about their program. I happen to be involved in that program in the sense I'm one of their service providers. So they have done wonderful things to help me be more informed and more able to help military families, which is something you're going to hear why I think that's so important. So we're going to do that today. This is where we're going to start. You know, I always say, what have you done for your relationship today? Well, the good news is you're doing it now. You're getting some information that can help. The other thing I'm going to say is, you know, for me to do a show called All About Military, that means my show's all about military. And the reason I say that this way is because the military is huge and there are so many facets and so many challenges for military personnel. And there's so many branches of the military. And there's so many situations where people have been in the military and retired, people are active military, people are National Guard, they're the state programs and all of those things. I can go on and on and on. So for me to do something about every single one of them is too ambitious. But I hope that you're going to see some of the reasons why I care so much. Some of the services and activities are available for families and service members today. And just again, a very, very heartfelt thank you for people in the military. For Vietnam people, welcome home. For the others, thanks for your service. And I do want to say that, I probably could have wore a shirt that looked military or something like that, something camo. Really would never do that. And one of the reasons I wouldn't is because, these people are a different cut of breed than I am. These people who've done this and their family members, there's a type of person that is special and caring, and they love their country and they want to make us all free. And boy, to have the mettle to do that, I really do a shout out because I'm extremely impressed with these folks, and they should be extremely proud for what they've done. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I always get some hook questions just to get you interested. My hook questions today I put down because I'm going to address the answers in the third section. But here we go. Let's have some of these. When one spouse comes home changed by their service, and the other one is changed by waiting for them to come home, how do these strangers find each other again? This is something I hear often, right? Is distance always measured in miles? Or can silence, stress, and unspoken fears create a wide gap between couples? Sound familiar? And it may not be you, but it may be somebody in your family that you love. Because even if we aren't in the military, I'll bet you we've been touched in one way, shape, or form by military service. Okay. What do you do when loyalty to the mission starts competing with loyalty to the marriage? That's an interesting one. Like I said, I just wanted to put some thought-provoking things down. In a home where rank once ruled, how do you make room for equality, empathy, and emotional safety? And by emotional safety, you've heard me talk already. It's that I can bring anything up to my partner and I feel seen by them. It's soothing to bring something up, even if we're having difficulty. It's safe to do so. And over time, we can count on it. It's secure. So, seen, soothed, safe, secure. Always very important to keep thinking about that. This is Dan Siegel's research, but I think it's very important. And the last one, how do partners rebuild trust when both have fought battles? Some have fought them overseas, and others had to fight those home alone, worried about their person. So, welcome to my show. Remember, part of what I say is this stuff needs to be true 2,000, 4,000 years ago, and it needs to be true 2,000 years from now. Now, my fervent hope is it would be nice in 2,000 years if we didn't need military. But, we haven't had an ability to do that yet. So we want to take this into account. I like to study music, and one of the persons I study a lot is Beethoven. And, Beethoven's time, around 1770 to 1827 or 8, I think, he would write a lot of requiem masses or funeral marches or those types of pieces that were kind of interweaved. In fact, at his funeral, I think they played one of his string quartets that was, for the military kind of march and stuff. Why would they do that? Because during that time, they had this thing called the Napoleonic Wars, and hundreds of thousands of people got killed in that war. So it wasn't unusual for people to constantly be having loved ones come home, and they had funeral marches. Well, the composers of the day would write music like that. Mozart wrote the Requiem Mass. It's one of his most celebrated pieces of work. I'm saying this was true 200-300 years ago. I'm sure if we talked about the Roman Empire, the same thing. So want to pay attention to this, because even if you aren't in the military, I'll bet you people that you love are affected by this. And this is what I'm going to talk about. Okay. So what I'm going to do is talk about some of my experiences with people that I know and love that have been in the military. And I want you to do the same. I want you to think about people who you care about or love who may be served. Maybe their family supported a service member. Okay. So the first one I did a Memorial Day on this. I want to shout out again. So I had a dear friend, probably one of the best friends I'll ever have in my life, in 5th and 6th grade. And I would go over to his house. And this was kind of a cool thing because 5th, 6th grade, you kind of start spending the night at people's houses a little more. And I tell you, if it was the weekend, I'd either be at Tom's house and his brother Jim's house and his brothers and sisters. And one thing I noticed about it, because I really didn't pay much attention, is that the dad wasn't there. Right? Well, the mom was, and mom did an amazing job. This lady, I shout out to her as a mom. She's gone now, but wow, what a lady. And we would go over and we would just do what kids do. We'd play out in the yard. We'd do all the fun things you do. But the dad was regular Army, downrange in Vietnam. He was fighting the war in Vietnam, combat soldier. And occasionally I would go over there and dad was visiting for a couple of weeks. And I never really thought that much about it. But looking back on it now, especially as an adult, I've noticed the impact that it had on the family, the stress of the mom, the kids, missing their dad. And when the dad came home, there was such a celebration to see him. But I noticed that was a military family. Okay. So again, wonderful family. And what a service the father did. And later, my very good friend Tom went on and was a Marine and is a retired Marine. And one time he told me, anything with wheels, I can fix it. So he was quite an accomplished mechanic for the Marines during his time of service. So just watching, how those types of careers impacted families and connected. Another one, 1984, 1985, there was a lot of money. And I was really fortunate to do group therapy and treat Vietnam vets. And I would hear their stories. Now, why that's important, and remember this, families, you probably know a lot of times military people come home and they don't say their stories. They don't say what happened. But this was an opportunity for these folks to get together and talk to each other, get some counseling, and I got to hear their stories. And I'm not going to go into those, but what I will tell you is when Ken Burns did his expose on Vietnam, they were segments of days, and they were about an hour and a half long each, I think. I couldn't watch more than 40 minutes of it. It was just too heavy for me. It wasn't even over there. Matter of fact, I don't even have a draft card. When I graduated, they did away with draft cards for a while and, signing up for the military. But I was close enough to that war that I still remember. And then hearing their stories, I am impacted by that. So part of what I notice is I can't imagine what it was like for them. And we need to remember that, and we need to appreciate their sacrifice for us. Another one, my mom was 13 and she's French. So when she was 13, the war broke out, World War II, and it completely disconnected her family. She went to a boarding school in unoccupied France with her sister. My grandfather was captured prisoner of war. He was artillery in the French army. And for 5 years, he grew vegetables somewhere in Germany to feed the soldiers for the Germans, right? There was a time when the commandant of that camp was being transferred, and my grandfather went to him, and he learned to speak a little German, and he said, "Look, if you are going to this part of France, would you tell my family that I'm still alive?" Because there was no word that he was just taken, and for 2.5 years they had no idea what happened to him. Imagine what that does to families. And to this day, and I wasn't in that generation, I'm still impacted by that. And when I watch my mom and I watch the trauma she had from that war, I still remember that. When I saw my grandfather, I saw that impact. And it makes me wonder now what it's like in the Ukrainian war or in Gaza or in some of these other places in the world. You've got to look at how that impacts on people with trauma, those types of things. We're going to talk about that today. Shout out to my uncles that were in World War II. And I had two uncles that were in the Korean War. And one of them was a tank person. I don't know whether he was a commander, but he was in the tank corps. And he came back very affected. I mean, so much so that it derailed his ability to really work. So I really saw him, up close, first, one-to-one, about how that war impacted him. So I'm hoping as I talk about some of these things, you can hear my reverence and my appreciation and my love for my family and friends. But I also want you all to really be able to stop and say, what about my family? Who's been in the military from our family? How has that affected us? How do you talk to somebody? How do you talk to their loved ones when we've been impacted? I treat trauma. I specialize in trauma. One of the things I do for the military. And what's interesting about it is that it's not just trauma. There's another thing called moral injury. And moral injury many times can really affect families and personnel. And it's just a deep rooted betrayal of their belief systems. And how do you overcome that? And how do you keep that from impacting your loved ones? Do you block the love from those people because of the injuries that you're experiencing? So again, thank you all so much for your service and your support of people who are direct military personnel. So one of the things I want to do is I want to show you a commercial. This is the program that I'm affiliated with. I think it's out of Purdue and it's out of Ohio, but we provide a service directory, I'm in it, of people that if you need help, that you can go to them. And I'll talk about it a little bit after the commercial, and we do some more on the second segment. But one of the things I want to say is I contacted these people Monday because I knew I was going to do this show today. Within about an hour, they came back to me and they talked to me about maybe getting somebody on the show down the road. You can't just do things quick. But also there's a commercial that we like to show for people. If you go on YouTube, I'm going to show it to you. You can go back to YouTube and you can access this, and it will tell you how to access service directories and people in your area that might be able to help if you guys are concerned. This show's an educational show. We don't do psychotherapy on this show, obviously, but for some things that we talk about, it's good education. It's good news you can use. But for some things, you may want to consult somebody who really has studied this, understands it, and knows how to move you forward. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and break for commercial, and you're going to see this commercial from the STAR group. Here we go.
It can be hard to understand the path you're walking as a service member, as a veteran, as a family member in the military community. But if you ever reach a moment when you need mental health support, we want to make sure you can connect with a mental health professional who does understand. Someone who knows about the unique challenges that relate to your military experience, how it feels to deploy, or to watch a spouse or partner deploy, what it's like to go on TDY or move every couple of years, how the stress of serving can weigh on you and on your family, or how it can be tough to transition to civilian life after serving. That's why STAR Behavioral Health Providers is training civilian mental health clinicians across the country. Military culture, deployments and other types of operations and missions, and treatments that work effectively for members of the military community. You can find trained providers in your area who offer in-person or telehealth services just by searching our free online directory. You deserve the best support possible. You deserve to talk with someone who understands. Find that support at starproviders.org.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
All right, and we're back, and I hope you enjoyed that commercial. I just want to say a little bit about it. They're called STAR Behavioral Health Providers, and they really do a good job. I know I can speak to this. They really gave me training on understanding the branches of the military, the challenges of service members. I also did trainings for Gottman in the Washington, D.C. area for the Navy. And really put together programs that if you're having difficulties with marriages, or you want to have somebody professional like me come to your base and really talk to marriages to receive some of the Gottman methods, so that people just who are married in those places can really learn how to do better, so that when they do go into marriage therapy, especially with a Gottman therapist, they're already kind of trained in the education of how to do conflict resolution and stuff. Anybody's ever interested in that, please contact me directly, and I'll be glad to try to put something together for you and your base. So just very important we do that. We care about you, and it's just one more thing we try to do to help the military. But the STAR Behavioral Program, I just kind of pulled this up before I went on today. But they have like tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 ways of teaching you that understands the culture of the military and all that. But now that I've got that, I can go on and get more training if I want. Just want to give you some of the ones coming up for me to give you an idea of how much they love you and train us to help you. So they've got one on prolonged exposure therapy. Now, I'm already trained in that, but I'm also trained and certified in EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Those two interventions are the gold standard for helping people overcome trauma. So we have that, and they teach you, and they don't charge you. It's just wonderful stuff. They have cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Sleep problems are a big issue in the military, so they give us specialized training for that, right? So let me see what else we got next, coming up in the next quarter or so. We got military connected couples, an interview model for treating infidelity. And by the way, next week I'm going to do a rerun for my show. Bill Bunbury, who just wrote a book on that, I'm going to show that again. I would be here next week. I had planned to be, but actually I'm sorry to say I had a death in my family, and I'm going to go to the funeral for that. So I won't be available next week, but I am showing that rerun. And the reason I've chosen that one is he's coming back. in a week or so, and we're going to do another show on his book. I don't know whether he wants to come the day before Thanksgiving, so it may be the week after. But I just want to let you know that even the military talks about issues with infidelity and how to help that for military people. Provider sustainment, that's for me taking care of myself. And then traumatic brain injury. They have one specially designed for that to help us help people who have been affected by it. So Star Behavioral Health Providers. I'm going to show that commercial one more time right before the end of our right at the end of our third segment, just so you can see it again. Now, again, I know you can always go back and you can watch the show again, which I encourage you to do, especially with somebody you love. But we're going to show that twice because I want you to see that again now that you've seen it once, and we will definitely take time to do that. So let me go to the mailbag. What we're going to do with some of those ones I just talked to you about, those kind of what I call teasers or kind of ways to encourage you to watch my show. I'm going to use those for the third segment on how to use the relationship house to have really tangible ways that you all can talk. So if you saw one of those and you said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that's us," well, we're gonna take some time and care to show you. All right. So let's take some questions from the mailbag. And I got to tell you, there were so many of these this time. I really kind of had to pick and choose which ones I took. And I was very impressed because a lot of these, kind of were what Star Behavioral taught me about, some of the challenges with marriages and how, for example, some people very quickly get married and they don't know each other real well, but they get married quickly. And maybe they get married quickly and there's a deployment. So they're learning their marriage all like we all do, but also with the challenges of military life. So the first question I have here from the mailbag is, my husband has been deployed 3 times in the last 6 years. Each time he comes home, it feels like we have to start our marriage all over again. How do we find our rhythm? Well, one of the things I guess I want to say to that is that you want to have a structure that you can count on. That's one of the reasons why, like I said, I love the Gottman method. But you want to have a structure. And what I mean by that is you want to have a weekly family meeting. And both of you want to take notes during the week about how the week went, what went well, not just what didn't go well. But then when you come up with things that could have been better, I don't want you to dwell on it. I don't want you to say, well, this didn't happen and that didn't happen, because those could be kind of the 4 horsemen, which is criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. We never want to do those. And if we do, we want to immediately enter the antidote for those. But for this, you want to have a meeting. And when you say what didn't go wrong, you immediately want to put in, what I wish we could have done different is this. If you're having difficulty with the kids, make sure to have those conversations away from the kids so that you can do gentle startup, calm, connected, but you have agreement with each other. So those are just some of the things that we can do. The other thing too is we really, really need to make sure we're having time for ourselves. So you want to put in that date night. And when you're in the date night, don't talk about problems. Talk about why you like each other. You want to cuddle often. You want to tell your partner why you love them so much. You want to give big smooches while you're doing dinner together and just talk about how happy you are right in the moment with each other today. And then, one of the things you want to do is look to see how we communicate well. And when we don't, what's going wrong? So those are some of my suggestions just off the top of my head. The next question. My wife came home from her tour. I want to slow down for people who aren't military and make a point. A lot of people think military is a bunch of guys in the military, and it is, but it's a bunch of women too. Women comprise a large percentage of the military, and they get deployed and they go through, all of the challenges and struggle all personnel in the military do. So we want to understand that this isn't just men going away to deployment. It's men and women, and sometimes it's both. The husband and the wife get deployed, and the kids stay maybe with the grandparents. So, it really is a world of that. So we want to shout out to those women and say thank you for your service too, and we appreciate that you have challenges and struggles along with everyone else. Right. So my wife came home from her tour of different than she was before. She was stronger, but I noticed she was more distant. She says, I can't talk about it. How do I help her open up without making it worse? Well, a couple of things I would suggest with that. I always say chewable bites in doses. And what I mean by that is maybe you could only talk for 10 minutes. And you want to sit down and have a good hour and a half talk. Yeah, maybe. but but I would start with where people are at with that. And then try to talk about things that you can talk about. So for example, if you listen to that, you don't talk about stuff. Well, that's what you don't do. What you want to say is, I'm really excited to connect with you and talk to you. And I want to hear all about things that are happening in your world and what you're thinking about. But I want to do it on your terms. I'm wondering if we can take some time and really open up to do that. Again, in doses. But the other thing is don't try to fix anything. What you want to do instead is you want to get your person talking. So you have to be a great listener on that. You have to be somebody who really what we call accepts influence in the Gottman world. And what that means is really be open to understanding your partner's world and their point of view, not to fix it, but to understand it. Seen, soothe, safe, secure. If you're sitting there and answering all those questions, yes, you're probably making progress where you want to be. And then maybe in time you can talk about why it's hard to open up, why it's hard to say something. You may hear something you don't like. Well, I would like to do that, but when this happens, I always feel like you try to fix it. I'll use that one. Well, then you say, oh my goodness, here I am trying to talk with you and I care about you so much and I just want to make it all go away. But what you need is to just talk so I listen and hear your feelings. Let me see if I can do better with that. Work towards those things. That one is a wife, but it could be a husband, right? Okay. I raised our kids alone while my spouse served overseas. Now that he's home, I'm not sure how to share the parenting again. This kind of goes back to my first one. You want a State of the Union. You want to look at kind of how both of you see raising kids works for you and kind of what you need as help to work for them. The other thing is your values, your beliefs, and your ethics on how to raise good kids. This is going to happen with all families, but you want to be able to talk about that higher meaning of what it would be like to raise wonderful kids. So one of the things you might ask is, how do you imagine our kids when they're 30? What kind of values do they have? How are they? Are they good kids? Why are they good kids? What did we do to make them good kids? So those are kind of questions that you might want to ask. Now, remember safety first, because sometimes these things really, really activate people's strong passions and beliefs. So watch the flooding, watch the horsemen, and talk in a way that you both feel both hands open. Okay, so that would be where I would be with that one. Okay. So we're coming up on the second segment. We got to go to a hard stop commercial coming up. But I just want to say that, there is a lot of support. So these kind of things can work really good. But if you find yourself getting stuck, if you find yourself, no matter what happens, you kind of find yourself in the maze in a blind alley, slow down. It's okay to talk to somebody who knows the stuff, cares, that can join you. And it's certainly not a shame in any way, shape, or form to want to reach out and get help. One of the reasons I say that is my experience overwhelmingly is we don't teach how to be in a relationship in society. I never got it in college. I never got it in high school. So this is something that requires not only special skill, right, but it also requires special skills and understanding the military. We are out there to help you. So why don't we go ahead and do a break and we'll come back and I'm going to answer some of those questions that we talked about in the first segment as in terms of how the relationship house helps us overcome some of those problems. So we'll see you shortly.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
All right, and we're back, and we're going to answer some of those questions that we started with in the first section, and we're going to do that by way of the relationship house. Okay, I'm going to give you some suggestions with the house. I know I've taught you basic things, but we're really going to talk about that. Let me look at the house for those of you who might be relatively new and don't remember this. The relationship house has three real sections to it. The bottom section is what I call friendship house. And I'm going to be making reference to this today, so I thought I would review it. Building love maps, the one on the very bottom, is understanding your partner's world, what's important to them. You know, we're coming up on Christmas and holiday season and Hanukkah and those types of holidays. And one of the things that you probably are going to want to do is to go out and get your person that you love a special something. Well, you might think, what do they like? What's important to them? How do they want to spend it, you know? Well, those are love maps. Those are how your partner's internal world is really important to them. You know, a lot of traditions at Thanksgiving, you know, that's part of the love map. What really means a lot to people, how they decorate the house, you know, what china they use when they have the family over. All of those things are love maps. The second one is share fondness and admiration. It's telling your partner why you love them and why they're special and unique to you. And I always kind of add fondness, admiration, but loyalty and respect. Those things build that trust pillar and build that commitment so strong. So it's very important that we take a measure from time to time about where we are in terms of our partner knowing that we think they're awesome. Okay. The third one is turn towards. Now, you noticed a few things that came up in the questions today were kind of blocking the love. You know, I feel quiet. They don't talk to me. They're reserved. You know, they're turning away. That's a problem because what we want to do, and we know this from science, is we want to approximate 86% of the time we successfully create a positive bid. So the one I always use is if I come home and I say, hey, honey, I'm home. Let's say she doesn't hear me because she's in the back room. Well, that's a failed bid. I didn't get my, hey, honey, come on back. So I kind of need that. So I go back to the back room and they go, oh my gosh, you're home. Hey, I'm so happy you're home. That's a successful bid for connection, right? Now, that's only 50-50. That's only 50% of the time. But you want to keep talking so those bids go up to 86%. But if they fall below 33%, we start going into something that I call attachment distress. That's when we don't feel like our person is there for us enough. So we got to make sure in the friendship house that we approximate the 86% bids. Some of what we talked about is blocking that, okay? Now, the other thing we have in the middle is conflict. We're going to have conflict, and there's several ways we need to intervene with conflict to make the conflict go away. And for the super special ones, they come from the upper part of the relationship house, create shared meaning and make each other's dreams come true, right? One of the things that my mother always wanted me to do is to go to Catholic Mass every Sunday. It's very, very important to her, not just because she was raising me and she thought that was important. My mom, as a consequence of the war, and remember, she was French, really believed that Jesus brought the Americans to make France, a country again because it was overrun. So she really always felt that she appreciated Jesus in a way that she wanted her kids to not only know Jesus, but to be Catholic like she was raised and her family was raised. France is a very Catholic country. So that's a very important part of her make her life's dream come true and her shared meaning that we have that together. Those things really can result in real gridlock issues in the conflict house. So they require a talking to. So now let's take those three parts of the house being held up by trust and commitment, and we'll have fun with it. All right. So the first question I mentioned is when one spouse comes home changed by service and the other was changed by waiting, how do strangers find each other again? Well, it's going to involve resolving conflict. But what I suggest you do first is go to the friendship house. You want to make sure that you're having your regular date nights and connection that are conflict free. You're making dinners together, you're cuddling together, you're telling your partner how awesome they are and how happy they are in your life. And you're really building what the Gottman Institute calls, deposits in the relationship house, right? Because then you can stand on those and stand on that positivity when you start going into the conflict, especially in the upper meaning house. So that's the first one I really want to kind of talk about. Now, I want to say something, and I haven't gotten to this, but I've gotten some special guest speakers that are going to come in and talk on my show probably next year. But sometimes with this, you have trauma. Trauma is a different animal. And if you're having trauma and it comes into the room, the past jumps into the present. And then all of a sudden, it's hard to make sense of what's going on and what the conflict is really about and all that. I always suggest if you're noticing that, both hands open in a caring, loving way, you might run that past somebody like me that can make a little more sense of not only trauma, but how to make it go away. So then you're not caught up in which is it, right? So I'm not going to talk a lot about it today, but if you're thinking there's trauma, like I said, that STAR behavioral is a nice place to know about, right? So when do you, what do you do when loyalty to the mission starts competing with loyalty to the marriage? That's an upper meaning house question. Make each other's dreams come true and shared meaning. Is there values? Is there beliefs? Is there ethics involved in what's going on with that? See, that requires a conversation. Right? So the first thing you want to do is accept influence. You want to really listen to your partner and you really want them to listen to you so that you're able to take that information and move towards trying to find a way to resolve it. Okay. And sometimes I will spend time talking about different ways to resolve conflict. And you're going to see that on my show too. So, stay tuned for future episodes if you say, yeah, I want to know more about that conflict resolution stuff. Okay. So let me check my time. We got some. Let's see. I got that one. Let's go to the next one. In a home where rank once ruled, how do you make room for equality, empathy, and emotional safety? Okay. So this is one of those ones that's a belief system. So what do I believe about equity? What do I believe about equality? What does equality look like for me? What does equality look like for you? What are some of those things that we both agree on? How do we work on some of those things, right? What we find is, and a little bit about conflict, with these kind of problems, you're going to find certain things, right? Certain things are inflexible. You're not going to yield on it. I talked to you earlier, my mom was very Catholic and she wasn't going to yield on that. And I respect her for that, right? That's very important. But some other people might really believe in some other ways of thinking or believing. So you have to understand some things are inflexible. But a lot of times what you do is you find out what you can be flexible on, what you can yield on, what you can say, okay, I'm cool with this, but I can't let go of that. So back to when you have real strong beliefs and ethics about the military, okay, but what can you be flexible on with being at home? And how do you do that, right? So that's a real important thing, is to have that flexible area. Now, if there's other things that are sneaking in there like trauma and stuff, Well, that may be something you want to get a second opinion on. Okay. So very good. Let's do one more, I think. Let me check the time. How do partners rebuild trust when both have fought battles, some overseas and the other one home? Well, that's another one we talked about earlier where people sometimes don't want to talk about what happened overseas. I really got a strong message from that when I was only 25, 26 years old. And these folks were talking to me about all the things they saw and, really got a sense of trauma. But I really got a sense, especially with the Vietnam folks, with moral injury, that they feel that they really did a wonderful job uh, of helping and loving and saving the country. And then they had a lot of strife and conflict when they got back with the protests and all those types of things. One thing that I did learn over time is the military, one by one, asked the Vietnam vets to come back to a retreat, and they took them to a place and gave them a hero's welcome on a base. And it sounds like it was really an amazing thing. I hope everybody that was involved in that war had a chance to be celebrated like that. But part of what they were doing with that, the military really figured that out. We want to erase that moral injury. We want to get back down to fundamentals and basics. So how do we do that in our relationships and stuff? Well, one of the things about that is we have to, that seen, soothe, safe, secure. And if we have had things that have disappointed us, we have to really talk to our partner about how that hurt us in a way that they really don't try to defend it, but try to explain that they understand how much that hurt their partner. Now, sometimes, back to safety, you might want to have somebody help oversee that. But, it really makes a difference when we mess up, when we do things that hurt our partner. And it's very easy to do in a relationship that we have a chance to turn around, come back, and really have a deep, heartfelt apology that's accepted and going back to rebuilding that trust and friendship. So those are some of the things that people should do if they're having trouble doing that. Like I said, I know certainly in the Gottman Institute, we have special skills just for repairing some of those things. Okay. So that's really, I guess, a lot of the questions that I talked about. But to get back to the relationship house, that accepting influence and conflict, right? Practice self-soothing. One of the things I find a lot of times in conflict is people get what I call upregulated. You've got to stay within a window of calmness such that you don't go flooded. Because if we go flooded, we lose our ability to use our thinking brain, and then we're just reactive. So anytime that happens, we have to settle down, separate different parts of the house, right? So one goes to the living room, one goes to the bedroom, settle down, come back and repair. So you want to not keep fighting if you're flooded. You want to say, I think we're flooded. Go to a different place, calm down, come back, repair, and not necessarily go back into what upset you, but rather rebuild the friendship house enough so that when you're far enough away from the conflict, you can start talking about it and resolving it successfully. It's very important. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go back to show that commercial again. And then we're going to go to our regular commercials, I think. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to do our fourth segment about going out and having fun talking to our partner. And if you are family, feel free to think about talking about how you can be supportive to military families in your community or the people that you love most. So we'll see you in a second and we'll talk about that.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
It can be hard to understand the path you're walking as a service member, as a veteran, as a family member in the military community. But if you ever reach a moment when you need mental health support, we want to make sure you can connect with a mental health professional who does understand. Someone who knows about the unique challenges that relate to your military experience, how it feels to deploy, or to watch a spouse or partner deploy, what it's like to go on TDY or move every couple of years, how the stress of serving can weigh on you and on your family, or how it can be tough to transition to civilian life after serving. That's why STAR Behavioral Health Providers is training civilian mental health clinicians across the country. Military culture, deployments and other types of operations and missions, and treatments that work effectively for members of the military community. You can find trained providers in your area who offer in-person or telehealth services just by searching our free online directory. You deserve the best support possible. You deserve to talk with someone who understands. Find that support at starproviders.org.
And we are back. And what I love about having an engineer is they know best. And they showed the commercial first, and then they showed the commercial that I gave you on Star Providers second. So shout out to him. And the other thing is, I like how, you can reach out to this program and they can help. They care about you. And like I said, it didn't take an hour for them to get back to me and make sure I had resources to show you today. So just really, really appreciate them. And I hope you can reach out and do that. The other thing too is I'm part of those providers. If any of you are on military bases or whatever, and you need somebody to really teach on an educational format, the Art and Science of Love, which is a 2-day workshop that I give, feel free to give me a holler. And we have other people like me. So if for some reason they're in different parts of the world or different parts of the country that may be hard for me to get to, which I kind of doubt, but maybe, or maybe there's two going on at once, we can certainly accommodate you. So feel free to look at this and say, wow, I could use this education that Don talks about. Let me know. So we'll put my information up there, and you certainly can contact me. And I do appreciate, letters and questions already. So anytime you want to reach out with me on this stuff, or just go watch some of my past programs, or if you just want to contact me with some of the other information that I have down there, feel free to do so. Remember, safety first. This show here is an educational show. We can't possibly, or nor would I want to do any kind of therapy over radio, television, but certainly can give you news you can use in your relationships. And I've been pleased with the feedback that people have given me that the show is helping them a great deal. So one of the reasons I'm so motivated to do so. So, all right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to my fourth segment, right? And this one's all about relationships in the military. So if you want to go to somebody you love, whether it's you're in the active service, or you're supporting, or a family who loves someone, and you want to talk about how to be better and more supportive and more helpful, first thing you want to do is set the intention and the tone. Calm, both hands open, loving, caring, fondness, admiration, loyalty, respect. Then one of the things you want to do is say one thing I love or admire about the person you're talking to. This is something that really, really is great, and you mean the world to me. The next thing, share honestly. I want to understand more of your point of view in a space that's safe for you to talk. Remember, seek to understand before you seek to fix. That's accepting influence. Okay? So, and listen, and you can even say it back to them. What I hear you say is this: did I get it right? Okay? Maybe say something that you might say, that makes sense to me that you would see it that way. Even if you don't agree with it, you might think it makes sense based on how they see things, right? So what you want to do is start with a little bit of conversation for some and see if you can build on it. Some people can't talk very long about these things, right? I wouldn't go out and try to run 20 miles. You start with what you can run. So same thing with talking. Remember, seek to understand before you seek to fix. A lot of people want to hear things and give you advice about, how you should see it, or this is what you should do. I wouldn't go there. I would say, wow, what I hear you saying is this. That's really hard for you, isn't it? Tell me more about why it's hard for you. I really want to know. and kind of have that attitude, right? Okay. So then what you want to do is, look at that supportive conversation. And at the end of it, see if there's things that you guys could talk more about that would help more the person or the family. And how do we proceed from there? Remember, a lot of times people will go with what they don't like, but they don't stop and say what they need or what they want. So really try to get back to that. What I could use instead is this, or how you could help me is that. And listen to them. And if you can help, great. If you can't, there might be other people and other resources that can. Okay. People really do care about the military. I know on occasion I'll watch TV. I don't watch much of it myself, but I do notice that there's a lot of programs now for vets and for disabled vets and those types of things. And they offer you opportunities to give money and support. That's just one way, but that's a great way that people can do this. I know a lot of churches and communities also have programs available for people that can help in a spiritual way. I've had a couple of people talk to me to kind of want to outreach to my program about maybe talking about spiritual aspects of relationships. And, back to me, if it's true 2,000 or 4,000 years ago, if it's true 2,000, 4,000 years from now, certainly love to talk about it. You'll notice on my show, I seek to understand. Next week, when I show that show that I've already had with Bill Bunbury on infidelity, you'll notice my questions are trying to understand more about what he's telling us in his book. And I invite you to go out and read that book if that's something that is visiting your family or whatever. So we just want to have that ability to look at that and do more of connecting and loving our family. Remember, a lot of what I talk about is forgiveness. Another thing I talk about is drift. It's real easy, and we all know drift. We all know it. All of a sudden you look up and you have an extra 10 pounds. Well, you drifted into it, and you want to lose that 10 pounds. Well, you can't just go, it's gone. What you have to do is change habits and behaviors, and all of a sudden you go back to where you wanted to be. So drift sometimes takes a while to get back to where you want to be, but it's worth it. And with relationships and those types of things, you do have to kind of, as I say, weed the garden. This isn't something that just happens all the time. You have to go out and tend to it. Marriages are very much like that, okay? And if you don't, you tend to drift. And then even if you're doing a real good job, you get older and then life changes. And now you have to accommodate your marriage with the new challenges of day-to-day life and year-to-year life, those types of things. So, okay, well, I hope this will work for you. Remember, safety first. Go out, watch this show again with the person you love, and then have that conversation at the end. Feel free to take that information that I gave you about me and give me feedback on what's working for you. And anything that you want to add or any questions you want to give me, I'll be glad to look at for the show next time. So you all take care of yourself. I apologize. I won't be here next week. I am going to go to a funeral. A dear, dear cousin of mine that I grew up with just passed away. And I want to go and be with my family and share the love and connection with them and celebrate his life. So I will be back in a couple weeks, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you again to our service members. I hope this show helped. I hope you see that my show is from the heart, and it matters to me that you all have wonderful lives. It's a little bit I can do to thank you for all of the incredible things that you do that we as a country can never thank you enough for. We'll see you next time. I'm Dr. Don Allen. This is all about relationships, working towards ideal marriages and loving, lasting relationships. And we will see you next week. Take care.
While All About Relationships is educational and entertaining, it is not a substitute for therapy, counseling, or professional advice, but an informative space for learning and growth. So tune in each week for an engaging and reliable approach to your relationships, ensuring viewers with practical tools to create deeper connections in their daily lives. Whether tackling conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, or family dynamics, this show is your go-to resource for anyone looking to foster healthier, happier relationships in a supportive and lighthearted environment. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern.